Welcome to The One You Feed.
There's a question I ask myself sometimes. Would my younger self be proud of the life I'm living today? Emma Gannon's new novel, Table for One, is, in a way, that very conversation. Her 36-year-old self speaking with her 20-something self through her characters. In our conversation, we explored how writing fiction can be therapy in disguise, how confidence shifts with age, and how every stage of life brings its own kind of wisdom and its own grief. This is a conversation about complexity, creativity, and learning to trust yourself. I'm Eric Zimmer, and this is The One You Feed. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah, I was contemplating this morning, how many times have we talked? I know I was on your podcast once. I think this is at least your second, possibly third. I think it's actually your third visit on our show, if I recall.
Is it?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Because I
love that, though, about your show. You have people back.
Yeah, I like doing that. You know, I like connecting with people that I have good conversations with and enjoy being with. It's part of the joy of doing the show. So, all right.
Yeah, no, totally.
We're going to talk about all sorts of different things. One of the things we'll talk about, maybe more than others, is your latest novel called Table for One. But we'll get into all that and your Substack here in a moment, because you know how we're going to start, which is with the parable. And in the parable, there's a grandparent who's talking with her grandchild, and they say, in life, there are two wolves inside of us that are always at battle. One is a good wolf, which represents things like kindness and bravery and love. And the other is a bad wolf, which represents things like greed and hatred and fear. And the grandchild stops and they think about it for a second. They look up at their grandparent and they say, well, which one wins? And the grandparent says, the one you feed. So I'd like to start off by asking you what that parable means to you in your life and in the work that you do.
I have been thinking a lot recently about, and this is going to sound really corny, I think, but just how love is, I believe, so much stronger than the hatred, the fear, all that side of things. And we're in such a crazy time at the moment where you would be very valid to think that the hatred and the fear are trumping, no pun intended, the other things. But I still don't believe that. I still believe love is more powerful. I still believe that it's like the stronger emotion, or at least the one that holds the most weight and has the most power to change things. And in the end is like what life is all about. So I think with the feeding of the wolves, it's like, no matter how terrible things are, choosing to love something, I think, is like the most powerful thing you can do.
I love that idea of just choosing something to love. There's a great Jason Isbell song that says basically the idea is, I hope you find something to love. You know, he's talking about, for him, it's music, how it's carried him through his life. But, you know, that everybody finds something someone that can love. And I tend to agree with you about there being more love than hate, because if we look at most people, the vast majority of people, they have people they love, that they are good to, that they are decent to every day. There's all the, you know, every parent taking care of their child. There's billions of acts of love every day, over and over and over and over. We don't see them. We don't think about them, but they're there. And to me, that always feels like if you were to put it all on a scale, if you were actually able to put it all on a scale, you'd see, oh yeah, there's a lot of love, there's more of it out there.
Yeah. And I think for me, like sometimes it feels rebellious to have that point of view, to be like, I'm going to go and find something I like today. I'm going to go and feel joy today. I'm going to go on a walk and like think the trees just look really lovely, and I'm going to take photos of them and feel some sort of love for the planet. I don't know, it feels like that's the hard route to take sometimes, because you can get sucked into all the negativity. But I like the idea of being like a contrarian who like wants to push against something. And I feel like pushing against what's going on in the world is like going and finding joy and like not being ashamed of that, I think.
Yep. I agree. I feel like I'm always a little bit of a contrarian also in pushing back on the narrative that things are worse than they've ever been. and that we're in a uniquely horrible time, because I feel like if you go to any time in human history, the amount of suffering that's on the planet is more than one person could calculate or handle. It's there, along with all that love. And and there's always been difficulty in human life. There's always been battles over power and money winning out over less money. I mean, all this stuff just feels to me so, you just look at history enough and you're like, this just keeps happening. And it's not that the suffering isn't real. It's not that, like, today there aren't people suffering because of the policies in the United States. I'm not trying to take that away as being meaningful and really important. But I think when we move into a things are worse than they've ever been mentality, that's hard to, for me, that's not a place I operate very well out of.
Yeah, I agree. And, if you read a lot of books from, hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, I tend to read things that are kind of from the past to remind myself that things have always been bad, or at least the same cycles, the same destruction. Like we are, it's not new, all of the stuff that's happening. And I think that is a good reminder. And also the fact that I don't know if, like with you, I agree that I don't think it's necessarily true. Like there are many things that are much better right now than they have
certainly been. I mean, if you gave me the choice, like, you can go back any time in history and drop down and live, I don't think I'd go anywhere. I mean, curiosity, sure, drop me in for a couple days, let me see what it's like. But as far as, like, any time in the past, I'm like, as a relatively average human, I mean, life was, my friend AJ Jacobs always says, to remind himself of how good life is today, he goes, surgery without anesthetic. Right?
Yeah, like any modern
you just
medicine.
Immediately are like, oh yeah, okay, hang on a second. It is definitely better, because, God, that's awful to contemplate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I don't have much to complain about. I'm probably coming from a certain lens on it, but I don't know. I look around and some things are good, and I'm okay with changing my lens occasionally. The news is real. We know it's happening, but there's also a lot of things, other things happening outside of the news. And the world is very big, and I think
it is very big. It is very big. Okay, let's shift gears here a little bit. I want to talk about the novel for a second. And I heard you on a podcast that was a podcast about writing. I don't remember what it was called. And you talked about this idea that the joy of a creative life is that it changes you as you do it. That by the end of the project, you've morphed in a certain way. And in that conversation, she asked you that question: in what way has this novel changed you? And you talked about the fact that it was very hard to write, that you overcame the real difficulty of writing that book, which I think is a great answer. But I'm going to ask it from a slightly different perspective. What, in writing about the characters in this book, did you see or change or feel different about after you had written them? Like, directly the people, the characters in the book, how did they impact you?
Well, I think everyone's different, especially with writing fiction, but I find it really funny how I write a book and then afterwards it's in hindsight that I can see I've just been like having some therapy essentially through the characters. Like that for me is all it is. And I'm fine with that. It's a thinly disguised subconscious journey of Alice in Wonderland working stuff out on the page essentially. And I think that's what we do all through our lives. Like when we're kids and we have dolls and we're like making them talk to each other, we're just figuring out our own psyche at the end of the day and hopefully making it entertaining and having the reader in mind. I don't want anyone being bored with me just like going into my own stuff. But yeah, at the end of the book, I realized that it's a story about Willow, who's the protagonist, who's figuring out how to be alone for the first time. She's like a serial monogamist. She's never been alone. And she's also meeting a younger woman who is going through something and she's learning from someone 10 years younger than her. So this like intergenerational friendship is happening. And I realized at the end of the book that it was like my 36-year-old self was talking to my 20-something self, and they were having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people say that their characters, every single character in a novel is you, essentially. Looked at different parts of you. And I think that's the case with mine.
Yeah, it's interesting because on one hand, it's the 36-year-old you talking to the 25-year-old you, but it's not at least in broad terms, it's not the 36-year-old explaining to the 25-year-old all the ways that, here's I'm wise because I'm 11 years older. It's actually that person trying to take the wisdom of the 25-year-old.
Yes, I'm so glad you spotted that, because I know we've spoken about like my burnout episode that I had, and I think I came on your show to talk about it. But honestly, it was a crisis of confidence. I was so confident in my 20s, and I had a great time in my 20s. Like, I did some really cool stuff and my career went really well. And as I've got older, everything's been harder, and I've really had to try and tap into that 25, 28-year-old who just didn't care and got stuff done and really believed in herself. And I keep being told that like the older you get, the more confident you get, and the more you know yourself. And I'm like, this is the opposite is happening to me. So how do I like tap into that kind of confident young person that didn't know everything, but she knew some stuff?
Yep. I think about this a lot also, which is, I mean, I'm older than you. You're in your 30s. I'm in my 50s. So I've got 20 years on you. So we've got a different sort of perspective. And when my age, I'm starting to really think about, okay, like I know what life looks like for people 50 and on because I've watched my parents do it. I've watched their friends do it. I see that thing. And there's this element in which I want to embody the wisdom and the good things that can come with that without losing that younger energy. And then I'm like, well, okay, in the same way that it's like, am I trying to put off, like if you go get a lot of Botox, right? You're trying to continue to look young, maybe in a way that doesn't make sense. I don't know. I've got no judgment on any of that. Am I doing the same thing? Am I trying to stave off aging by embracing this younger self? And when I net it all out, I feel like I'm finding the right balance for me, And for some reason, there's a concept that I carry around in my mind, which is, would that young self be proud of me? Would that young self look at me and go, yes, great? And I don't know why I put that young, like, it's usually like a 17-year-old, with my 17-year-old self. And it's interesting that that's one of the ways in which that I end up sort of unconsciously, I don't want to use the word judging myself, but looking at my life through, would that person be happy? And so why did I think a 17-year-old is the person that I want to keep happy? I just think they're interesting questions that your book raises a lot of.
There's something to be said for like a certain age, whether it's 10 or 17 or how old, that inner you is kind of like running the show in terms of wants to be creative or wants to be free or wants to go and play outside or wants to, I think we channel that younger self in all that we do sometimes. But I think for me, it's less about like, I don't really have an issue with like looking older. I actually kind of love that I can like go into that phase of like not caring as much and like changing up my style and like enjoying like later in life. That'll be fun. I think it's more the energy. And like I go for walks with my 20-something friends and they're really excited about the world. And that's, I think, what I lost for a bit during my burnout was like, I don't feel as excited and I don't feel like I can change the world anymore. And I think it's wanting to tap into that hopefulness I think I had in my 20s.
Yeah, I also think that is a question about, when I think about energy and fired upness, right? Like 20-year-olds are pretty fired up, right? They are. They have an energy that I don't. They have an element to them. And some of me wants to recapture that. And then some of me is working on like, but that's not, you know, is age the reason I'm not that way and I'm sort of in an age appropriate phase, or have I lost something? And I don't know the answer to that question.
That's interesting. I mean, the real fundamental message, I guess, of the novel is all this stuff is like being in that middle ground, I think, where you're looking to the future and then you've got a lot that's gone behind you and you're figuring out who you're going to be. And I think the 30s is quite interesting for that.
I loved the book, by the way. I really enjoyed reading it. You said you didn't want it to be boring. It wasn't. I enjoyed it all the way through. And I felt like I could untangle a lot of this deeper questions underneath of it that was there. And I really liked it. And I love the fact that it ultimately is, to me, a reflection of reality in that it's not simple. Actually, there's a line in the book. There's Willow is the main character, but she also has an aunt who's kind of been her mother in a way and just always looked out for her. And they're talking about Willow's mother, who's not present due to different issues. And you say, it's complicated. That was always Carla's line. Carla being the aunt, you know, she always said it's complicated when they talked about her mom. And you say, and it's true, depression and mental health are complicated. Those things are definitely complicated, but so is life. And I loved that the complications didn't resolve themselves in a tidy way in that book. It didn't end on like a downer. It actually is very hopeful, but it's hope. For me, it was hope amongst the fact that life is complicated and that's not going to go away.
Yeah. I feel like the ending for me felt like a ... to be continued. Like her journey is not over in any way and life is really complicated. And I guess also the theme, I suppose, for me of the book is like feeling trapped and how do you get out of that? So like Willow feels trapped in her relationship, she, you know, by the end. And then Naz, who's the 20-something, is trapped in this career where she has to perform as herself. And I like to think the main character, unshackled herself a little bit.
What's really interesting about that is that she didn't even consciously recognize she was trapped. I don't think. Doesn't sound like, right? Reading reading her relationship from the outside, you can kind of be like, huh, all right, you know, a little bit of a red flag there. Oh, okay, a little bit of a red flag there. But she's in it. And I think she has these subterranean understandings, but she doesn't really actually know it. And then she's not the one who chooses to get out of that relationship. It actually happens for her in the sense that the guy breaks up with her. And I think that's also really interesting about how sometimes, my experience has been sometimes I've needed the other person to blow the structure up because I'm not good at it. I'm loyal on the side of perhaps too much in many cases. And so, but I can look back and be like, oh, thank God. You know, at first it was like very difficult, but later I'm like, oh, okay. Someone let me out of that cage. I wish I'd broken out of it myself. But the end result is the same, which is I'm out.
Totally. And I feel like that's everyone's like character arc in real life and in fiction is something happens to you, the inciting incident, and then you have to work with life to figure out the next step. And I think most people would look back on their life and think that the bad thing that happened turned into a slightly better thing on the whole. And also, I guess, you know, for me, I'm the same. I try and make the thing happen over and over and again until like something, I'm not the one to break it off, basically, which can be quite painful, but ultimately quite good.
I wanted to ask a question. That you are, as you said, you know, there's an idea that the novelist is every character in the book in some way. And I was curious, though, whether you have realized to the degree to which you are like Naz now. And I mean the good version of Naz now. Do you see that? Do you see yourself in that role? Because I do.
I did. I
Okay.
think
Okay.
past tense.
Yeah.
I think that's why I brought that side in, because I could write that character knowing it,
Uh-huh.
knowing from the inside what that entails, like having a career on the internet and performing as yourself, and also having a private self and having a team of people around you who are like basically profiting off you being you. And I also know how it feels to leave all that behind and realize that nothing is worth it in terms of anything that affects your mental health that badly. So yeah, like I definitely could write that character from experience.
What I saw is, and that's why I said like a good version of Naz, because to me, and everybody's life is different on the inside than it is on the outside. But I look at you as an influencer in the good sense of the word, meaning like I think lots of people look to you as someone who has figured out how to do this internet life thing in a way that is true to themselves and honors who they are. And I find, I look and go, okay, that's, you in the way that Naz is a role model for lots of young women. I think you are also for a different type of person. But I think without, I don't know how much of the book we want to give away, but, things with Naz aren't exactly as they seem. But with you, it feels like, and we had this conversation in our last time, and I asked you, we were talking about an Amazon tribe where they change their name as they go through different stages in life. And I think I asked you, like, what would be your name before your burnout episode and your name after? And before we got to a name, you said, well, I kind of think of it as like performative Emma and real Emma. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that real Emma is kind of running the show to a greater degree than in the past.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's why Naz hasn't figured that out in the book yet, because she's young and she takes everyone else's advice all the time. Because I think you do go through a phase of that, don't you, where you feel like you don't know anything, so you're learning from everyone. And I do feel like I'm coming to a point in my life where no one knows better than I do on certain things. I'm not saying I know everything. I just mean like in terms of how I want to run my life, like I'm the expert on that, and therefore I consult myself first in everything now. And that is a huge change. And it's amazing what that does on like a physical level. Like my body and my energy and everything totally has changed leaning into that. And I find that fascinating. Like just how you can carry yourself in the world can be so different depending on whether you are trusting yourself or not.
It's interesting because just a few minutes ago, you said that you partly missed the 25-year-old that had all the confidence to go out and change everything. And yet I hear you talking about a different type of confidence right now, which is this confidence, not that I'm going to put a dent in the universe and all that nonsense. The confidence in I know who I am and I know how to shape my life so it fits me. And that seems to me the confidence that you haven't lost confidence. It looks to me like it's shifted. Now I'm playing psychologist here, so I probably should step out of that seat, but nonetheless.
No, I love that. I think that's so true. But I think it's changed in terms of, like, I believe that whenever we go through a big transformation in life, that we have to grieve something. And like, it sounds really dramatic, but it is grief. It's like, I'm no longer that person and I no longer get to have those things. So I've stepped into this new confidence of like knowing how to run my life a bit better. And that is amazing. But I can no longer do a talk to 100 people on stage.
I see.
Can't do it. Sends me into like a panic attack, need to go home. Can no longer go to like a party and like drink cocktails. Can't do that anymore. Like can no longer, be in a social situation I don't want to be in for longer than an hour.
Yeah,
like
I see.
I feel like there's kind of loss to that in a weird way, because I used to do all that stuff and really enjoy it, and the new version of me can't do it. But I say I enjoyed it. I don't think I did.
Well, that's the interesting and tricky part about all that is, to what extent, and we talked about this also last time, to what extent do we see what looks attractive? I think we were talking about beautiful people on a beach in Italy partying and drinking, right? And I see it, and I'm like, I wish I was there. I want to be there. I want to be one of those people. I want to, and then when I have a little bit more reflection, I'm like, I wouldn't be happy there. Like, I don't fit there, right? I wish I did on maybe some level, but I don't. But I hear what you're saying about this grieving. I think that with me and drugs and alcohol, in the beginning, the only perspective I could take was like, those things are bad, get them out of here. I need to stay. I was dying. Over time, I've begun to become more honest about what I give up in order to live life the way I do. And I do think there are things that I give up that I don't have in life that would be nice to have if I was able to do that in some degree of moderation. And so I definitely think there's a grief and I also am a big believer that like every stage in life, almost everything that's happening, you're just playing a game of trade-offs. You're playing a game of like, this is better, that's worse, this is better, that's worse. And you're trying in our minds to do some sort of mental calculus of, is this right for me?
Yeah. I think that's so true. And, I remember someone saying once that if you drink alcohol, that and this isn't even if you're like addicted necessarily, just if you just have alcohol, you are taking something from the next day.
Yeah.
Because there's like an energy exchange there where like you're going to bed later or your body is, has toxins in it. The next day just isn't going to be as good. And I always thought that was interesting because like you say, that life is trade-offs, and that can be an extreme trade-off or it could be like little trade-offs. And I realize now, I can't even go for like loads of coffees with people who I'd love to go for a coffee with because I'll be in bed for a week.
Yeah.
Like I just am such a highly sensitive introvert, and realizing that means not drinking and accepting it.
Yeah, I went with my friend. It's funny the way the road sort of in some ways seems to narrow for me. It's like the vices have just one by one continued to shrink down. I was saying to my friend Chris, we go like once a year to the horse races, and last night was the year that we went. And as we were driving down, it was like 7:00-ish, and I said, the number of times that, particularly in early sobriety, that I at about this hour would drink a Red Bull
Right,
is amazing. Like that would not go well right now.
Yeah.
And you talk about the gifts and the loss of aging. I mean, that is one of them, right? Is my body just doesn't withstand being treated poorly in the way it used to.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I'm really into this topic. I feel like, I've got so much to learn about it. Like, I feel like I'm talking as if I'm like 95, like I'm fine right now. But at the same time, I know what's coming. And like one of my favorite podcasts is actually a podcast about women over 40 talking about menopause and talking about their bodies and talking about things that change. And I like these conversations because I just think, why would you pretend this is not happening? Like that's what life is. And there's so many good things too.
Along the lines of that, of women having conversations, there's a line late in the book where Willow says something, and she's talking about, I think, Naz. She's talking about her mother. She's talking about her aunt, Carla. And she says, I feel a strong duty to protect the women I love. Even the idea of them, women with complexities, with scars, who find life difficult and need help. Talk to me about that feeling in you. Do you feel that? A duty to protect the women you love? The idea of a complex woman who's multifaceted, good and bad.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I wouldn't say just women, or like anyone. Complex people. I think like everyone's trying out new identities quite a lot especially online, like we have more freedom now to say, this is the type of person I am, or this is the new Substack I've just launched, or this is the new thing I'm into. And I think if someone's trying out something and they are complicated, like let's support that and give people a bit of grace. I think I just think we jump to conclusions very quickly about people and about people's opinions and people's politics, and I don't know, I think it's like the more interesting angle for me, as maybe it's like a journalistic thing, is to be like, oh, maybe that person's going through something, or maybe they're trying something out, or like maybe something's going on there. I think that's more an interesting thought to have than just like that person's terrible or that person's broken or whatever horrible word we want to use.
Yeah, that's one of the fascinating parts of the book for me, was the character Willow being assigned to cover this younger woman as a journalist, and the journalistic way in which Naz's story slowly comes out. Right in the beginning, there's no depth to her, really, right? She's just a caricature of a certain idea. Not a bad idea, but she's playing that. But as time goes on, in a true journalistic fashion, or in the way that you are saying, like you keep peeling layers of the onion on someone, and then by the end you're like, oh, I have a very complex person here. And I think it's back to what that earlier line, complicated.
Yeah, and I really like that sort of it's a bit old school, I guess, like in terms of a narrative device. Like journalists meet someone and uncovers what they're really like. But those are my favorite types of things to watch. Like I've always been really interested as well in, big interviewers like for the New York Times, and they meet a celebrity and then they talk about that experience and what they're really like versus what they appear to be. I've always found that really interesting, trying to figure out what someone's actually like. And also just knowing that there's so much more than the pixels we see.
Yes.
And people can just be very good at presenting themselves, and there's going to be someone behind the scenes. And I think the person behind the scenes is more interesting.
100%. My version of that I love is every time I judge someone, which I think we're all the same in this. I see someone, I form an opinion. It just happens like that. There's no like conscious choice. It just happens. All of a sudden I've made an opinion and I have an idea of who I think this person is. And I love, love, love when I'm dead wrong. I just love as the process unfolds. And then I can stand at one point and look back at what I thought and be like, yeah, you totally missed the mark. Almost always in a good way. Almost always the person is better than I initially judged them. I don't know what that says about my initial judgment, perhaps. I don't know. But they're almost always a better person, and there's more depth to them than I thought in the beginning. And I love when I get to have that experience.
It's probably a good way around, instead of thinking someone's just great straight away and then realizing that. But I love that, and I do think like life is really hard for people. Like in general, like I've touched wood, haven't actually had that many things happen to me, but from talking to people have had stuff happen. Like lives can be really brutal. And I think when you meet someone and they seem a bit strange, or they're a bit jittery, or they're a bit nervous, or they're a bit this or that or whatever, like we're all human. And then you figure out like what they've been through. I just think, that has always interested me. And I think with Naz, I wanted to show someone being very good at putting on a front and then realizing what they've been through behind the scenes.
Let's turn our attention. You've got beautiful bookshelves behind you. Well, hang on a second. You told me about your special. You told us on Substack about your special shelf, and yet I see many, many shelves. What's going on here, Emma? This is investigative journalism.
It's so I made a shelf within the shelf.
Okay.
Basically, there's one shelf on that bookshelf that is a special one. And I realized, why do I have all my favorites like scattered around? I just thought, this one shelf I have that I wrote about on Substack, which has maybe about 20 books that really mean a lot to me, just having them all together in a row, like distilled, I guess, what I want what I want for myself
Uh-huh.
essentially as well as a writer. Like the quality, the themes, the authors, and how much I admire them. And sometimes I get, I get very lost in what I'm trying to achieve. Like I'll just be
Hmm.
like doing it, and then I'll wake up one day and go, what am I doing again? And I think just looking at that shelf is just such a reminder. And then I think I really recommend anyone do this in terms of like on your desk having like a mood board or a collage or a photo or a post-it note. Like, what are you doing this for, and what has always inspired you? And yeah, that was I really enjoyed doing that.
So your special shelf, people can go to your Substack, which is called The Hyphen, and they can become a subscriber and they can see this. You've got books on it. And as part of that, you analyze like their categories. Okay, there's a biography, there's 4 novels, there's 3 self-help books, 5 writing guides, 5 collections of essays, and 15 memoir. So that tells us something about the category of book you like. But a level deeper, each book probably means something slightly different to you. But are you able to puzzle out other themes about you based on all the books that are on the shelf more than just the category they're in?
I think some of the books that are on the shelf are due to how they helped me through a certain time of
Yeah.
my life. So I think a lot of it is reminders. Like life moves so quickly, and there's like thousands of photos on my iPhone and loads of emails in my inbox. Sometimes it's just like that book helped me figure something huge
Mhm.
out. And I would love to remind myself more often what that thing was that I learned so that I don't have to keep learning it again.
Yeah.
I feel like I go round and round in circles, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I figured that one out once. I don't think it's going to happen. Like it's just going to stick forever, but just seeing the books all lined up, yeah, it just like condenses down something
What's
for me.
one good lesson from the books on that shelf that you don't want to forget?
Wow, there is a book on there. Oh my God, I'm just having a look. It's really hard to pick one because they're all so special. Um, I mean, there's Big Magic on there by Elizabeth
Hmm.
Gilbert. Um, I read that book in 2015. I met Elizabeth Gilbert that year because I went to the book launch because I was working at a magazine at the time. And I've kind of written my version of Big Magic that's coming out next year or 10 years later. Very different from that book, but my take on creativity. And I think seeing that book, so I reread that book every time I start a new project. I listen to it on audiobook and I go on a long walk and I buy it for loads of people. I think it's just a reminder that, like, again, back to the conversation earlier, like 25-year-old me is still there. She knew that I was interested in this topic.
That glancing down was that I, following your thing just this morning, thought, what would be on my secret shelf? And as you were talking,
yeah.
one just landed. I was like, okay, got to get that one on there.
What would be on yours?
Well, here's before I say what's on it, here's a couple things I noticed. One was, like you, I can find categories, and the main categories seem to be spirituality in sort of a Buddhist Eastern lens, and novels to a large degree. And the other thing that I found, at least at first glance, is that many of them, and this is maybe the test of something being on the secret shelf, is it has to have longevity to get there. They are books that came earlier in my life. There are much fewer books that I've discovered recently. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think about why that is. I mean, one of the great parts of my job that also, like any great thing, has a downside. I get to read amazing books by amazing authors on a very regular basis. The downside is that happens with such regularity that it's, kind of one after the other, that things don't stand out in the way that they normally or used to, right? And I miss that. I also think some of it is 10 years of reading these type of books. It's very rare that I open a book and I read it and I go, oh my God, I never thought, I never saw that. I never knew that. I never thought of that. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm just saying that I think for me, it's all about not, and this is what my book is about to a certain degree. It's not about the big epiphany anymore. It's about just the steady work of integration. You know, it's taking what I know and continuing to live it more. However, with all that said, I'll give you a couple books. One is, from a novel perspective, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. And then there's books like Buddhism Plain and Simple, which is a book that is about a Zen teacher who wrote it years ago. There's The World Religions by Houston Smith, which I think is one of the best books ever written if you want to understand just the gamut of faith traditions and what they mean and what they say. It's kind of a masterpiece. I do have a couple. Susan Cain's book, Bittersweet, from a few years ago, is on there. I mean, that book. Her, yeah. I know Quiet is the book she's most known for and that most people love. Bittersweet hit me a little bit more. So those are some of them.
Can I ask, do you remember where you were when you read them? Like, do you remember the time in your life, or like can visualize when it was?
Some of them, yes. For example, another newer novel that's on there is Demon Copperhead. And I do remember where I read that book. I was in Mexico on vacation with my son, and we both got colds, which turned out to be COVID. We didn't know it at the time. And I just remember being in my hotel room reading that book. Others, they definitely tie to a time and an era very, very clearly, but not necessarily a moment. But that's indicative of my memory as a whole.
But I think that is the case with the special shelf, is like, it's about a feeling, it's about a connection. And for me, I can remember pretty much where I was when I read each one. And I think that, like you just said, if it stands out to that extent in a sea of books, and we've both read so many books, and I think that's important to pay attention to. Like, what do you like? What do you gravitate to? What's your tastes? I think these are all the questions I have as a writer going into my career as it unfolds, is like reminding myself what my standards are and what I like and what I want to be. Because there's so many opportunities that come your way sometimes if you're lucky enough to get them. And sometimes it's a great opportunity on paper, but it's like, is it going to get me closer to that special shelf?
Yeah. Interestingly, we have a couple authors in common on the special shelf, but different books. So you've got Dani Shapiro on there. I think one of her books about writing, and I have her novel Signal Fires on there.
Oh, yeah.
I do remember that one. It was audiobook, and my partner Ginny and I were in a car listening to it. I remember it. And the other one that we share in common, but we have a different person on, is... Hang on. I thought there was one more. Oh, I didn't mention this one, but you have Hilary Mantel on there for, I believe, her memoir, and I have it on for Wolf Hall.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I mean, this is a hard exercise to do, because I would put all those books on too. It's really hard, that whole, like, what's your favorite book? So I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that this could become a 25-year project for me.
How many have you got on yours at the moment?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that happened in about 20 minutes. You know, but it's something, you know, I think about. I have this dream someday I'm going to go through and like pick my top 20 albums. Yes. But I don't embark on that because I'm like, okay, that could consume years of my life if I'm not careful.
Yes. Well, there's something, do you listen to Desert Island Discs?
I have heard it sometimes, yes.
It's like a BBC show.
Yeah.
That is, I think, an exercise I want to do at some point. And like, obviously, you know, trying to manifest one day being invited on. But until then, I'll make my own list.
Well, I was in your country recently, England, on vacation. And when I go somewhere, I try and make a playlist for Ginny and I for that place.
Love that. I did the same for California in a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
standard
And
way.
I went to make a London list because we were in London and we were in Cornwall. And I was like, I'm going to make a London list. I spent so much, I did spend an inordinate amount of time on it. And I could have spent way more because the amount of music that's about London or made in London or is just mind dropping. Mind dropping? No, that's not the draw dropping, mind blowing or mind dropping.
I want to, would you share the playlist
Of
publicly
course.
or
No,
is it
nothing
private?
private.
Because I would
Okay,
love to listen to that.
I will. And then I did one for Cornwall, which is more like sea shanty type things. And then one for the English countryside,
yeah.
which was more like traditional English folk. I spent a lot of time on these. I went way overboard this time, but I love doing it. Like I'm in a really happy place when I'm doing that or when I'm thinking about books to go on the secret shelf because it is an excavation of me in a way.
Yeah, and you're adding such a cinematic experience to your trip, listening to those songs while you're there is just adding to it.
And then
I
there's
love
a
that.
general rule that I can't just come back and keep listening to the playlist. Like it's not that it can never be listened to because I want it to anchor me back in that time.
But then can't you listen to it in your home and relive
yes, I
your
can,
memories?
but not all. I can't do it a lot. Because if I do it a lot, then it starts the memory of what it's. I don't know if you've had this experience, but if I hear a song that I loved that for some reason haven't heard in years, it takes me somewhere immediately. Even if much more than a book does, a song will do it. But if I've listened to that song 100 times in the intervening time, it does. I mean, I can vaguely recall, oh yeah, that kind of was, but it doesn't take me there in the same way. It's sort of like seeing an old friend that reminds you of a time in your life versus like a friend that you walk alongside all the time. I have friends that I walk alongside all the time musically. And then I have some that I just kind of like that old friend, like it takes me back to these days. And so with the playlist, I try not to over listen to it because I want it to be able to transport me back to that place and that time.
That's really powerful. Yeah. No, I love that.
There's a phrase that you used. I don't remember where it came from. But you said at one point, you were talking about kind of what you do now in general. And you said, I just love turning life experiences into life lessons. You were doing it. That's what writing does for you. And I guess my question is, how does that process happen? Is it conscious? Or are you just like, tell me about how that actually happens, how a life experience becomes a life lesson in your experience.
Well, firstly, it's not a life lesson that I'm trying to force onto others. It's like a life lesson for me. And I think that's why I write a lot privately. I write a lot in my journal. I write a lot that's on my laptop that no one will ever see. I write to process my life and the world around me. Like I find life really overwhelming, and I think just writing it down has always done something for me since I was like 10 years old. So I think like in a smaller way, that's just what I'm doing. I'm trying to take something that's happened and kind of put a bow on it a little bit. Even if it's a really bad thing that's happened to me, I genuinely feel like the perspective of being a writer is really empowering because you can turn anything into something. There's a phrase that's like, you either have a good experience that's great or you have a bad experience that makes a good story. And I do believe that. And I think when I wrote my memoir, A Year of Nothing, which I'm re-releasing actually next year in January, I was so burnt out. I could not do anything practically for a whole year. And yet I've written this book that really didn't take that much effort, and I'm really proud of it. And it just made me realize that, I don't know, it feels like this mark of knowing that I am a writer because I can write through anything. It's not like, oh, I'm a writer because I go to the gym at 6 a.m. and go to my desk. It's like, no, I'm a writer because I write about the things that happen to me.
That's a very interesting distinction that I want to come back to, that writer distinction. I want to stay with the process a little bit more. So I know, like, you follow to some degree Julia Cameron, who I think we both are sort of friends with, her morning pages, which is basically you just write, complete stream of consciousness in the morning. as you're doing that, are ideas popping out? Are you like, oh, I could take that and develop it more? Or like, I'm kind of curious when the lesson and the experience meet. Does it happen when you're out on a walk? Does it, I'm just,
Yeah.
because I think this is I think about this. I'm not good at this, by the way. Natively, I don't think, in the having a life experience and then connecting it consistently to a life lesson. I don't know why. I'm self-reflective. I don't know why this doesn't happen easier for me. So I'm intrigued by the process.
I think it's, when I wrote my book, The Success Myth, in a bit of a fugue state, because it was like pre-burnout and I had a deadline and I was really tired, and I wrote that book in a very unhealthy way. Like, I really pushed myself too hard and paid for it later. And I think the lesson was like trying to come out of me. It was like the writing, and I know Julia Cameron, does believe that to a certain extent we're channeling something. The book was not really like consciously me. It was me kind of, it's going to make me sound bizarre, but like I like blacked out whilst I was writing that book. Like I don't know where it came from, but it came from somewhere. And then I got to reread it and be like, oh yeah. So I don't know, the writing process is very mysterious. And I think sometimes we write things and then later we're like, oh yeah, I get that now. The penny drops. That's what happens for me anyway. Like, my books are ahead of me in terms of like psychologically. It takes me a while once the books come out for it all to make sense.
Yeah, back to that distinction of being a writer. I have now written a book that will be published next year. So on by one definition, I am a writer. But on another, I don't think I am. Like, I don't gravitate towards sitting down and writing things down. I think it's why this podcast was what worked well for me, was because that I didn't have to do that. I think it still is a vehicle for me to talk about what I think and feel and how I view the world in conversation with somebody. But it wasn't me just off writing. I'm really intrigued though, because this book emerged from a program that I've taught a bunch of times. So the book was kind of all here already. I think I'm going to do another book. And what I'm sort of excited about is I don't know where it exactly will lead me. And that sounds fun,
Yeah. I mean, did you enjoy writing your book?
Yes and no. I mean, there were times that I enjoyed it, for sure. Like you, I felt that I really got something from the fact that I could sit down, go through what felt really difficult, and emerge with something I felt really good about. Like, that I could do that. And I think I learned something about my capacity to create there's more to it than I thought. I can do more of it than I think. I mean, for example, when we got the book contract, I think it was for 55,000 words. And I went back to my agent. I said, can we negotiate that down to 45,000? Like, I don't think I have enough to say. I mean, this book was a monster by the time I was done. Even with me trying to cut it all the time, it was like 95,000 words. I was like, okay, apparently I have more. I've got more that'll come out of me than I thought. So yes, I did like many parts of it. The early process of it for me was really, really difficult. The self-doubt was huge. The not knowing quite what the heck I was doing or how to even do it or think about it. I feel like I got better. I feel like the later chapters were much easier for me. Because I had learned something about writing a book, which I had no experience in at all to start. And I think you don't get good at things. Some people have talent, but talent is cultivated. Craft is developed. And I haven't spent my years developing that craft. So I think it took some time, but yes, I did like writing it. I liked the focused nature of it. I also really liked having a place for ideas to kind of go. I don't know how else to say it, but the book's obviously churning in my head all the time, and I have an idea, and I'm like, oh, that could go there. It doesn't often, but it could. Normally, when I'm out and about and I have an idea, it's untethered. What do I do with it? Now, the downside to that is now that the book is done, it's painful because these ideas keep coming, and I'm like, well, I can't change it. I can't fix it. Do you go through that?
I do, but I kind of honor the process of that's what it is, and it has to have an end point. I don't want to keep tinkering with it for years. I think something just needs to be done. But I always, like this creativity book that I've just handed in, I know that I'm going to have more thoughts about creativity, of course. And I know that in like 10 years' time, I'm going to be much more wise on the topic than I am now. So I just think to myself, I can always write another one. And like I have like a very abundant mindset when it comes to creativity. I don't think like, I need to go back to past projects, and I never feel like I'm going to run out. I always feel like I have new ideas. So, and also in this world we live in, having my Substack, for example, I have somewhere to put all my ideas whenever I want, and it's really
I
exciting.
agree. I do a special episode for people who support the show called Teaching Song and a Poem, where I do a teaching, a song. And that for me is, if I record it as an idea, a teaching or an idea, or I don't necessarily love that word, I don't know what else to call it, then I've captured it. I'm like, okay, it lives somewhere now. I may choose to extrapolate upon it later, but that's sort of my version of putting something on Substack.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I want to spend a couple minutes on 36 things I know about myself. As you turned 36.
Ooh, probably forgotten what I've written.
One of the early ones I feel like I need to try, which is going to bed at 9 p.m. makes me feel like a superhero the next day. What time do you get up if you go to bed at 9 a.m.?
About 7, and it's a lot of sleep.
But what if you went to bed at 11 and got up at 9? Does it have the same effect, or is there something about the 9?
I mean, if I'm being completely honest, and we are on this show, it was when I gave up drinking. Because that's when I would stay up drinking. I'd go to bed at like midnight because I'd be having all my glasses of wine. Yeah. So it gets to 9 p.m. and I'm like, do you know what? I'm kind of done with today. And I'll just go and read my book, and then in the morning I can make my coffee and start another day. And I'm really enjoying the mornings. I like getting up earlier now. I like the ritual that me and my husband have. Like at 7 a.m. we go downstairs. We like have, chats about the world. Like my life has just opened up in different ways. So, back to what we were talking about losses and gains, I lose those 3 hours of like drinking or whatever I used to do to numb out in the evenings. And then I gain the next day.
I heard somebody saying recently, I think it was semi-tongue-in-cheek, but not completely. It was a conversation about aging, and one guy was saying that in the last couple of years, he had just given up drinking. And so he felt younger all of a sudden because he had stopped doing that. And the lesson they came up with was, don't give up drinking or drugs too early in your life, because you won't get the late career bump from it. And I was like, God bless it. Well, that ship has already sailed for me. But I just thought that was funny how different you can feel. All right. To more. I loved this one. I don't need to spend the whole day with someone. Even if you're my best friend, half a day of socializing is plenty for me.
If that. Half a day is quite long as well. I just don't need a lot of time with someone. I like quality time with someone. But if I'm really close to someone, I can spend the whole day with them, because that will mean like sitting in silence and doing what we want to do together, and not having like, I can't do like constant talking kind of all day. And I think what's so nice about getting older is you get to set these parameters, don't you? You get to say, I don't like doing that, and you don't have to explain yourself.
So you are married. I can't recall your husband's name. Peter? Paul. All right,
Paul.
I got the
Nearly.
P, and I got the biblical reference. I was in the neighborhood. Paul. So I'm assuming with Paul, you are able to have that, some degree of that space while you're together. so that you don't feel like you need to get away. I know you like to get time away and alone, but you don't need to feel like I got to get away from Paul every 3 hours.
No, it's one of those lovely kind of relationships, isn't it? I suppose when you like, I would really struggle without him. He's like the one person that sort of is just part of the furniture for me. Like, I love being around his energy. There's no like, he doesn't take anything from me. And we laugh about it because I don't know if you've heard of spoon theory. That theory that people with chronic fatigue, they say, like, how many spoons have you got? And most people have like 12 spoons, and people with chronic fatigue have like 3 spoons, and they have to work out how to spend those spoons. And with Paul, it's like, he doesn't take my spoons. He gives me spoons, but sometimes it's neutral spoons. Like, and so I can always be around him, and I also need to go away sometimes. Like, I go on my solo trips. I went away for a month last year on my own because I just wanted to be completely alone for a month for no reason. And I don't have children, so I can sort of do that. So yeah, I think the spoon thing has been really interesting for me. Like, does that person take my spoons? That's
a really great analogy. And there are people who I really do love who I probably think do take spoons. Not that their personality or something about them drains them. It's maybe just like anything, But that's what I love about my partner, Ginny, is that I've never articulated it in that way, but that's kind of it. She's the first person ever, and I actually never believed this, I would have this, that I'm not really wanting to get away from often. That says something about my previous relationships, probably says something about me also. But like, yes, I do like to be alone, and I almost never feel like I crave it because somehow we exist in a space together in a way that it doesn't demand something of me. Or it's just there's and I still sort of marvel at it because it seems so I feel so fortunate.
Yeah, and it is amazing. I mean, I met Paul when I was 22 and I'm 36 now. So we've been together like nearly 14 years, and that blows my mind. But I think why I want to go away by myself is because I think it's really important to remember who you are kind of on your own. And being away for a month last year was just really just curiosity for me. I was like, what am I like on my own? What restaurants do I go on my own? What, like, who, how do I feel when I'm on my own? How do I want to spend my day on my own? And it's like, if you've been in a relationship that long, I don't get those opportunities, which is lovely, but also I'm curious. Yeah.
My fantasy is, and I got this from reading Jack Kerouac when I was like 17, is that like he went away to like, I don't think they have these so much, but they used to have fire towers that would be out in the middle of like some huge wilderness. And you would just be in this fire tower or at the cabin next to it by yourself for like 3 months. And I've always been like, what would that be like? I'm just fascinated by the idea of just me, and actually just me in a radically different set of circumstances.
Would you ever do that? Like go to some sort of island on your own?
I think I would. Yeah. I actually think that I would give that a try. I think I will. I also want to do like a month-long silent retreat, which I'll probably do at some point. Which has a similar feel because a retreat setting is so different than your normal life. What I find is like Ginny's going to go away tomorrow and she's going to be gone a week. But being in my normal household, in my normal routine, doing the normal things that I do is not the same as sort of like you did, going somewhere totally new and seeing how I emerge.
Mm. Yeah, and the other part of it was when I was away for a month, I came back home with a lot of gratitude. I just realized actually how great my relationship is and how great my life is. And sometimes you just need, I think it's really good to have that reminder sometimes.
Me too, 100%. Like I just realize I always thought of myself as sort of to use the analogy, a bit of a lone wolf. And I realized like I'm just better as a person in nearly every way with Ginny in my life. Like it makes it's the best version of me emerges. There's something, and that's wonderful, because I feel like in some of my older relationships, the worst version of me emerged.
Mm-hmm.
We are out of time. We're going to do one more. Oh boy, there's so many good ones on here, Emma. All right. Sometimes my life isn't falling apart. I just need to go for a walk and maybe have a biscuit.
I stand by that one.
It's self-explanatory, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it actually harks back to the 9 p.m. because that's that's part B. Have a cup of tea and a biscuit if the world's really falling apart, or go to bed early.
Yeah. I am struck by how often after a certain time at night, I just don't feel good. I'm overtired, and I've learned to just go, I'm tired. I used to call it depression because the two feel very similar to me. And yeah. And so for me, it's just like, okay, you've kind of, I love the spoons thing. I'm going to be thinking about that because like I'm out of spoons at that point.
Yeah, and it's just reality. It's just facts. Like there's no need to, I don't overthink it. I don't analyze myself. I'm not like, why am I out of spoons? And I shouldn't be out of spoons. That's a big one.
Yes.
I shouldn't be this person. I should be the person in Italy with the cocktails. I shouldn't be this person in bed at 9 p.m. And the minute I just go, I'm out of spoons, that's what my body's saying. And I'm going to protect myself and take myself to bed.
Great life advice. Let's wrap it up there. Emma, thank you so much. Your Substack called The Hyphen is really wonderful. Listeners can go there. And your book, Table for One, is a lovely, hope-filled, but still psychologically complex and interesting novel. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
If what you just heard was helpful to you, please consider making a monthly donation to support the One You Feed podcast. When you join our membership community with this monthly pledge, you get lots of exclusive members-only benefits. It's our way of saying thank you for your support. Now, we are so grateful for the members of our community. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without their support, and we don't take a single dollar for granted. To learn more, make a donation at any level, and become a member of the One You Feed community, go to oneyoufeed.net/join. The One You Feed podcast would like to sincerely thank our sponsors for supporting the show.